And joining me now is Torsten George, the Chief Cybersecurity Evangelist for ID Dataweb. Torsten, thanks for being here. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, I mean, so we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We're talking, everything we're talking about today as part of the IT Modernization Summit obviously comes through that lens of IT modernization. But obviously, cyber is such a massive part of that equation. And so, if we're talking about cybersecurity kind of through that IT modernization lens, um, where are we at? How secure are we, and how secure are public sector agencies as we sort of embark on this new world that we always seem to be embarking on?
Thanks for the tough questions. I mean, I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, and the first thing I do is I check the news. And unfortunately, every day I see a new headline about a cybersecurity attack and a data breach. And so, unfortunately, my answer would be today's security is far from being sufficient, and the numbers speak for itself. Despite our industry spending an estimated $214 billion in information security and risk management solution, more than 69% of organizations still experience an increase in identity-related fraud attempts. And quite frankly, we have been so focused in the past on username and passwords, but the fact is that 51% of organizations that rely on this type of approach are seeing an even higher level of identity fraud when just doing that. And obviously, the results are significant if you take this type of approach. We're now talking about an average annual direct cost of $13 million dollars for larger organizations as it relates to identity-related fraud. So unfortunately, I have to disappoint you. I think we still have some work to do when it comes to cybersecurity and our defense strategies.
Absolutely, especially with, I mean, those numbers are incredibly stark, right? You can see it there. So, with all that said, I mean, what does this mean for folks now? I mean, what do they need to do right now to sort of, I don't know if that full gap can be closed at this moment, but what do they need to act on now to sort of start taking steps forward?
Yeah, I think it's really you need to know your opponents to defend properly, correct? I think when you look at football teams, they're not spending the entire week on a practice field to prep for their game day. They're going into the video room. They're looking at what are their opponents doing, and we as cyber defenders have to think in a similar fashion. We should look at the tactics, the techniques, and procedures that attackers nowadays are leveraging. And the threat landscape changes dramatically. Nowadays, we talk about spoof devices, synthetic identities, and even deepfakes that are making it increasingly difficult to distinguish. Are we dealing with a legitimate user or are we dealing with a threat actor? So we really have to rethink the way that we approach cybersecurity. So back in the day, we used the credential-only authentication. We trusted that username and password because at one point somebody assigned that to a person. But those times are over. And a good example is the cybercrime collective called Scattered Spider. They made the headlines over the last few months. And their most effective tactics involve impersonating IT help desk personnel, where they call an employee and say something is wrong with your computer. We need to check your credentials. We need to potentially even install remote desktop software. And that's how they get into the network. And then recently they adjusted their tactics whereby they're now reversing the roles. They're posing as an employee to deceive IT help desk staff. So they're calling in saying, hey, I'm the VP of sales. I'm currently traveling. I can't get access to my Salesforce account. I need access immediately. I'm getting into a meeting. Help me out. So they're putting a lot of pressure on the help desk agent. And that's how they get access to sensitive information. They might ask to reset passwords. They might even ask to transfer MFA tokens to attacker controlled devices. And so identity is really something that should be center for us to look at from a defense perspective.
And so when we think about identity sort of as that central component, I mean, if you're a uh, state and local IT person, IT leader, what are the things that I need to think about right now to sort of reduce that risk?
I mean, to really ensure that you're not falling for tactics like scattered spider, there are some fundamental things you can do. So, application controls is one of the things. Phishing, and I emphasize phishing resistant MFA like FIDO2 or PKI-based authentication. These are methods that are still a good deterrent to today's cyber attackers. You should also put in place restrictions as it relates to remote desktop protocols or any type of remote access tool. But to be frank with you, more sophisticated attackers can also bypass those type of methodologies. So if you wanted to really take an aggressive approach, you should be taking a more holistic approach to identity-related attacks and kind of look at augmenting your traditional IAM tools with emerging technology like identity threat detection and risk mitigation. And so here, you use different methodologies that you can even chain together to kind of close the gaps on the attackers. And you would leverage authoritative sources as well as risk signals, depending on the risk level of the individual digital transaction, to really make sure that there's a high assurance level that the person that you're interacting with is really a legit user or not.
It's interesting, hearing all of this, and there's a laundry list of things that I'm hearing that definitely apply and need to kind of go to leaders of the public sector. But when you think about the public sector piece of all of this, right? What are some of the unique challenges there when we're talking about government agencies and state and local governments who are either providing or a gateway to services for people right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, again, it's not just the workforce that they have to care about. It's also very digitalized services that are nowadays provided. I know I just renewed my driver's license. They're telling you no longer to come in, correct? You should do everything online. And so it becomes really even more important that they're leveraging the latest technology to deter cyber adversaries, to combat these identity fraud things. And so they can leverage specific variety of authoritative sources, like, for instance, leveraging a copy of a driver's license that you now compare against a government registry entry to see if there has been any tampering, any theft, any forgery. You could also take advantage of biometric methodologies where you look at fingerprints, facial features, even keystroke dynamics can be leveraged to identify if there's a legit user behind it. And the sources that feed these methodologies are ranging widely from credit bureau data to telecom data. For instance, if a SIM card got swapped just recently, but prior to that, for 15 years, nobody did that, that's an indicator of potential compromise. And then also looking at your device properties, at your IP address, things like that. And that's how you ensure that that digital interaction with your citizens stays secure and balance properly with the user experience, which is important because you don't want to create too much friction so that the users kind of feel kind of forced to do things that they don't want to do.
And as I'm hearing all this, I there's so much information, so much fear and stress and anxiety out there about all of this stuff, especially if you're, a typically under-resourced agency or department. What are some key takeaways here? What do you hope that say I'm Joe Schmo, the CIO in a small town in Nebraska, what are you hoping I take away from this conversation?
Sure, I think again, put yourself into the shoes of an attacker and see what tactics, what techniques are they using. And you will find out post-mortem analysis shows that in 80% of the data breaches, identity is the root cause. So putting your emphasis on that front end of the attack chain will really yield major benefits. I think the other thing is you have to find ways, and identity threat detection and risk mitigation can help with that, to find a proper balance between security and end user experience, because you're dealing with consumers, with citizens, and they're not security experts, so you can't completely overload them. And then I think when it comes to your internal workforce and how to ensure that you're not facing any identity related threats there, it's also set up 30 minutes with your HR department and have that collaboration. What are HR actions? What are the risks associated with it? And what can we do to mitigate this? Because if I know I had a performance review with an employee and he was rated badly, I have an increased risk for insider risk, or I should know about somebody being offboarded. What do I need to do, not just in the last moment, but leading up to that moment? So these are really the things that I would highly recommend.
That's a huge point. I think that conversational piece between departments and leaders, I mean, that's a massive part of this. Well, Torsten, thank you so much for being here. This was such a great talk, and I think I certainly have stuff to think about in terms of my own identity as a perimeter here, but I'm sure folks do as well. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
And to our audience, stay tuned for more from today's IT Modernization Summit.